All right, thank you very much for watching us at the Muslim Observer. We are at the annual banquet for the Muslim Observer, and today we have a special guest. He was a keynote speaker today. Wajahat Ali needs no introduction. He's a famous journalist, a playwright, a stand-up comedian, I would say. And what else am I missing, Wajahat? Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Co-owner of 2 children, Chaiwala.
That's wonderful.
Writer of Lotus.
First of all,
poems.
Politics,
Yes.
big news stories, Donald Trump. Tell us, why are you such a staunch supporter of him, and why should we vote for him?
I think we should vote for Donald Trump so that we can end up in the Muslim camps, and then there'll be, inshallah, we'll have a control over one area of America where we can implement Sharia, and everything will be halal. And so, if you vote for Donald Trump, we can be rest assured that, inshallah, Muslims get registered, that will have less rights, and they will end up in camps where there will hopefully be lotas and Wi-Fi.
All right. Now, on a serious note, watching him every day and raising the bar and all those things that he says, is it more fun or more scary on a dangerous side? How do you see that?
It's not fun. The sad part is we did not take Donald Trump seriously. We did not take him as a serious candidate. We saw him as a joker, let's be honest, going back even to last summer.
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, he's not going to make it. Let's not listen to him. Even I did. I said, there's no way the Republican Party is going to take this guy seriously. But through the guise of infotainment and reality television hyperbole, he has deliberately used this larger-than-life personality to become a blowhorn, if you will, for the anger and resentment of a large part of America. And what he's specifically done is take anger, fear, and ignorance and combine it together in what I say is a Molotov cocktail, and use it to lob against minorities. Blacks, immigrants, Mexicans, women, who aren't a minority, they're 51% of the population, but they're underserved in many of the corporate America and many of the job sectors, and of course Muslims. And lo and behold, slowly but surely, that recipe has always worked across the world to get both votes and money. And he's run on it. And he saw, look, 2 things happen. Ben Carson, remember good old Ben Carson, who's going to look at the fruit salad of your life, Ben Carson.
We don't want a Muslim in the White House.
Whose voice I use to put my baby to sleep, by the way. Yeah, like if he was your GPS, you would probably sleep and crash your car.
Oh, okay.
But Ben Carson was the first one. We forget. Last year he said, Muslims do something called Sharia, and they do something called Taqiyya, and like I want to do a vetting of Muslims. And what happened? You know what happened? Huge spike in Facebook friends. His post went viral. He got $1.1 million funding, and he got record number of grassroots turnouts, which was at his next campaign event in Cincinnati. Trump saw that. Trump was also one of the leaders of the birther movement, thinking that maybe Obama is a Muslim, maybe he's not, right? Trump saw that, played on it, because he said, hey, there was no cost. In fact, there was benefit. Trump took it a step further. Registration, temporary ban. He saw, oh, what? Look what happened.
Right.
I got a bump. Right. Then he says, I see a video of Muslims celebrating the 2 towers falling down in New Jersey. Where's the video? Jinns apparently have it. But he saw it. Ratings went up. Right. So he's like, I'm on to a winning formula. His first ad was a 30-second ad. People forget. It was, I think he used $2 million for his first ad. What did the ad concentrate on? Do you remember?
Yeah, he was showing people crossing the wall and stuff.
I'm not politically correct.
Right.
I'm going to do a ban of 1.6 billion Muslims, and I'm going to build a wall. And he showed apparently Mexicans fleeing, right? But it wasn't Mexicans, it was Moroccans.
Right.
But brown-skinned people, 2 countries that start with M. Right. And so we should not be entertained by this. We should be scared. Right. Because this type of rhetoric, like I said, has been mainstreamed, and he is your Republican presidential candidate. This has been happening since 2008. In 2012, nearly every Republican presidential candidate ran on the anti-Muslim Sharia fear-mongering meme, except Mitt Romney. But Mitt Romney was seen as too conservative, and he lost. Fast forward to 2016, it's become a winning formula. Right. So it's not entertainment. I'm not entertained by this. I'm alarmed by this. Right. But at the same time, I'm not surprised because I've been following the trends. And just look across at the Atlantic, it's happening in Europe. Right. The rise of the alt-right. Fear of refugees, fear of immigrants, fear of brown people, fear of Muslims, right? And it's being used deliberately to prey on the very real grievances of aggrieved people who feel like the economy is not helping them, the system has abandoned them. And Donald Trump says, I will be your bulldog. I will be your megaphone. I will be your unfiltered id and rage. Follow me. And that's why he's so attractive to people, but that's why he's also so obnoxious and so hideous to so many.
All right. Well, thank you. And I know we don't have too much time, but I'm going to quickly go through that. And briefly, I want to ask you, I know you talk about Islamophobia a lot, and you talked about that in today's speech. One of the questions that people face, especially Muslims, and this is sort of in thinly veiled words, it may not be as clear. And the question, I think the simple fact that a lot of Muslims feel like they face is like, do you love America? And if your answer is yes, tell me, how can I trust you?
Yeah. It's the never-ending...
How do you answer that?
So it's the never-ending loyalty test, right? You have to prove you're Americaholic. You have to engage in the condemnathons. Like, I have to condemn the violent acts of violent criminals I've never met who've done violence in countries I've never visited.
Right.
And if I don't condemn it somehow, I'm condoning it. And no matter what I say or no matter what I do, me, you, Muslims, and Islam will be indicted, convicted, and sentenced by a nameless judge, jury, and executioner who honestly will always hold us guilty. Right. So I tell people, I'm not playing your game anymore, right? My question is, why do you assume that I would support such a thing? The fact that you even assume I would support violence, criminality, you should be ashamed, right? And is this the equal standard? Like, let me do a loyalty test on you. How would you make it feel? And then you also tell people, and this is what works with people, that the same loyalty test you're putting on Muslims is the same loyalty test that were put on Jews, on Catholics, and on Eastern European immigrants. It happened to your father and your grandfather. It wasn't fair then, it's not fair now. And when you kind of say this, people go, oh yeah. Like, seriously, the most common stuff, like, Muslims sometimes don't realize you just have to dig deep in American history and American values and tell people common sense. Like, this happened to your grandfather, and people go, oh yeah. Or another thing, I'm like, do you know Muhammad Ali was a Muslim? They go, oh yeah.
It's sort of repeating itself, but
no,
this time around
it's you have to proactively remind people of their better natures.
Right.
And how this has been a remake in American history. And you'll be surprised that even some of the most intelligent people forget it.
Right.
Because they're bombarded with this sensationalism. And so I flip it on their head. I don't engage in the condemnathon because it'll never end. But at the same time, I try not to bash people. I try to use it with a little humor. And I try to remind them of how this has happened before and how that does not make America safe. And, you know, if you turn your neighbors into suspects, I always tell people and I remind people, you're only helping the extremists, because the number one recruitment and propaganda of ISIS and Al-Qaeda is what? Right. The West is at war with Islam.
You, right.
And so you remind people of this and it gives them a little bit of pause.
Right. Now, you talked about humor. You're hilarious, I must say.
The checks in the mail.
And you use that. In fact, people have used that to bridge gaps, and that really works. But I mean, I'm sure you agree with this. In the Muslim community, especially in other countries, not in the U.S., humor is not well respected, especially if you start making jokes about the culture or religion.
Really? We're funny, man. We're funny people.
I mean, don't you think in majority Muslim countries there's some, and people complain about that.
So you will see some of the most edgy, subversive, biting humor from satirists and cartoonists and comedians in Muslim majority countries. The problem is that due to authoritarianism and other forms of extremism, they're clamped down in Muslim majority countries, right? They don't have that freedom to spread their wings and express themselves. But that makes them even more funny and subversive. It exists. But the sad part is that they're threatened in Turkey, in Pakistan, right? In the Middle East, unfortunately. But we're a funny people. We love humor, we love satire, we love poetry. But you know, America also has this culture of snark and satire and Saturday Night Live and Jon Stewart. And that's a great example of how using humor sometimes makes the medicine go down easier. Right. What they say is that if you say something with humor and people laugh, endorphins get released, people literally, their brain chemistry changes for a bit, their guards come down, and they become more open to listening to otherwise politically and culturally hostile talking points that they wouldn't have entertained otherwise. Right. Seriously. So humor is this really powerful tool, if you use wisely, helps the harsh medicine go down easier and helps you actually win over a hostile audience.
We just witnessed the example. You used humor and people love you.
Well, not only that, but you made a good point. They don't see Muslims as funny.
Right.
And that's our fault. Like, I've talked to so many well-intentioned people who read articles of mine and they're like, I laughed and I was shocked that Muslims could be funny. Why was I shocked? And I'm like, why were you shocked? And I said, when I think of Muslims, I think this, and they do this. Serious, observative, angry, can't take a joke. And that's our fault also.
Right.
And so I've seen that, especially if you subvert that image they have of us as these dour, like humorless, serious people, and you inject some levity and humor and humanity and wit, it gives you that much more credibility and edge and a winning audience. That's what I've seen.
All right.
And audiences are like, wow, he's not angry, he's well-spoken, which apparently is a shock, even though I was born and raised in this country. Muslims themselves do. We internalize. We have so much inferiority complex. Like, Wajahat beta, you didn't lose your temper on CNN. I'm like, why would I? Like, but mashallah, you spoke so well. But I'm like, what? Like, this is my country. Of course I spoke well.
Of course. Yeah.
And so we have such low standards for ourselves, and people have such low standards for ourselves that, like, you literally have to, you don't even have to hop over the bar. You just have to, like, walk over without blowing the bar up. And they're like, oh, you're a passive Muslim too, mashallah. And I tell Muslims who are funny to embrace that side. And you know, in our culture, of course, there's that, you know, don't be besharam. You know, like, have some sharam, don't be a clown. But like, Rumi was funny. You know, and he was a Sufi sheikh. So this exists within our Islamic culture as well. We have to mind that.
Now, and very quickly, I want to go through.
I talk too much, man.
Last two questions I want to go through. I know you touched upon a little bit of history of how Muslims share a deep history in America, and that brings me to a very basic question that I think both sides on the extreme use that, and I mean like extremist organizations in Islam, or the terrorist organizations that they call, and then even the Islamophobic elements that have. And their point is that America is at war with Islam. How do you answer? Is it really at war with Islam? And if it's not, then how do you convince people that it's not at war with Islam?
You convince people easily the fact that you and me are surviving as American Muslims. My parents have been in this country. I was born and raised in this country. Muslims are your doctors, your cab drivers, your teachers, your students. They're your neighbors, they're your friends. There are Muslims who are unemployed. There are Muslims who are striving. There are Muslims who are residents. There are Muslims who are storytellers. There's Muslims who have been here for 500 years. How can you say America is at war with Islam? Does that mean I'm a person divided? Does that mean I'm a person who's sitting there like, you know, my stomach is Muslim, but my tongue is American? Do I rip out my tongue? Our existence.
They're like regular people.
No, but our existence, the fact that we're making mosques, the fact that we're going to school, the fact that we're working, the fact that I'm multi-hyphenated, the fact that I have a kid named Ibrahim and Nusayba, the fact that I was an English major, our very existence disproves that stupid, ridiculous, absolutist vision that America is at war with Islam and Islam is at war with America. Our success completely mocks that extremist position that is used by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So that's why I tell people, be Muslim and be American, be yourself. You're living proof that there's no war between American values and Islamic values. You want proof that America and Islam can coexist? It's me. It's my son.
And that's a great
point.
It's my parents. That's a great point. People
and how are you going to defy that? You can't. And then people usually shut up. No, they don't. You know what they go? He goes, "You're a good Muslim. We're talking about the bad ones. You're a moderate."
Finally.
And then you dance.
You have surely been a successful personality. Every person
kind of
knows
personality.
You've done a lot of things. I mean, I can't say more. I mean, what I've said, but what advice would you give to young people like you and me who are, you know?
I'm not young.
What advice would you give to the youth who are just aspiring to see people like you and they want to become a part of society, they want to do something?
Uncle Wajahat is giving you advice. My advice would be, if you're an American Muslim kid and your parents are immigrants and you have a funny multi-syllable name, right? You have two choices. You can either hide yourself in the corner, be a spectator, or you can be ashamed of yourself and have an inferiority complex and wear many different masks like so many of my friends do. They're a different person in front of the mosque, they're a different person in front of their parents, they're a different person when they go to Pakistan, they're a different person in front of their white friends, they're a different person at the bar where they drink not water, right? And they're actors, they're performers.
Right.
They're trying to juggle so many personalities, it becomes exhausting.
Right.
I made a conscious decision because actually I made an unconscious decision early on. I couldn't help but be Pakistani Muslim in America. Like, it's just who I was.
Right.
Left-handed guy with lentil stains on my shirt, spoke 3 words over. That's who I was.
Right.
And like people just smelled the Islam and Pakistani-ness on me, right? So I was always a token Muslim, token brown guy. I went to all boys Catholic high school. So the decision I made was to engage. I said, I'm gonna engage exactly as I am. I'll be consistently authentic and try to be the best version of myself. If people like me, alhamdulillah. If people don't like me, that's okay. And I've seen as a result of that, from childhood to now, that most of these people who don't know a Muslim, they say Wajahat. You're that one Muslim guy, friend of mine. They always went to me, and they still go to me right now in the age of Trump. Tell me the story of Islam and American Muslims. I trust you. And so be yourself, be the best version of yourself, be a net benefit to humanity. Be proactive. Help people because it's the right thing to do. If you're a doctor, if you're an engineer, if you're a cab driver, if you're a student, our faith commands us to be the best or try to be the best at what you are. And then people will see you as a net benefit and an asset. And inshallah, you know, and I'm going to say this also, advice is be the better person. Because it's very easy to be cynical. It's very easy to be angry. It's very easy to be bitter. It's very easy to be afraid. It's very easy to want to bash all our enemies. I would tell people, this is counter advice. Have more sabr. Take 2 or 3 more hits if you have to and try to be the better person. Always respond, but respond in a better way, right? And invest in people's inherent goodness, right? And if you do that and you work really hard, right? I've seen that, alhamdulillah, I think maybe those are some ingredients of my success. Talent is never enough. Talent is very common. I've traveled the world. Talent has to be honed into a skill through hard work and time. Once you have the skill, then you take the skill and hard work and you make it into achievement. Having that achievement is not enough. You have to be your best promoter and presenter. If you don't believe in your own story, and if you're not willing to be the protagonist of your own narrative, don't expect anyone else to invest in you. And where they see in Arabs especially, right, our cultures don't teach us to be proud and bold. You know, it's seen as being a show-off, right? And like you're supposed to have other people do it for you.
Right.
But other people don't do it for us. They don't lift up our storytellers.
Right.
So there is a way to have humble swagger. Does that make sense?
Right.
So walk with humble swagger and have passion. And I've seen that when you're passionate about your idea, people invest. And do mutual reciprocity. I've always invested in artists and writers I respect because I want to see them grow, and they've helped me. There's a Highlander mentality that I want kids to avoid. The Highlander mentality says this: there can be only one. I have to be the first playwright, and Wajahat got there, I have to kill him and drink his blood and become it, right? There can only be one writer, Haramzada, I'm going to kill you. Because that's what's taught, right? But what I've seen is forget the Highlander mentality, invest in our ecosystem and community, increase the pie. There's more pie slices, it's tastier, and more people can sit and eat at the table, right? And if you do that with goodwill, brick by brick by brick, you work hard, you lay the foundation. It took me 15 years. Like a lot of people think, oh, Wajahat, I can't do what he did. It took me 15 years. It was a long, lonely uphill journey. Everyone laughed at me, but I believed in it. I had faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I worked. And then the thing I'm really proud of is I can trace every brick to the journey that has taken me to this path. And I'm very proud of that. I never screwed anyone over. I tried to be a decent person. I invested in people. I never sold out. I don't think I sold out. I stayed true to my values. I wrote what I wanted to write, how I wanted to write, when I wanted to write, and I took the long route. It wasn't easy. There's no silver bullet, but it was far more fulfilling. And alhamdulillah, it took me to a path where I sit here with you today in Michigan. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much, Wajahat. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. I was trying to shake hands with you.